Welcome to day 7 of Photoshop. Today we're going to make ourselves a cool typography poster. I'm your sensei, Taylor. Keep in mind that this is a 2-day assignment. It's going to be fairly complex and challenging. So buckle your seatbelts. Let's get going. We're going to go ahead and set up a new document. We're going to hit New File here. You'll get this pop-up. Come over here to Print if you're not already. And notice that print technology and web technology are different settings, different sizes, different resolutions. That's because there's some very big technological changes between the two mediums. On digital, you're using 72 pixels per inch. That's anything from mobile, television, film, video games, web. All those use 72 pixels per inch, and they use RGB color. Now, we're not going to get into all the whys for that. You can ask me if you really want to know, but over here in print, notice 300, and we're not going to even stay with RGB color because print technology actually uses CMYK color. Now, the differences between these you'll learn later on in your career here at MTCHS, but let's go ahead and select CMYK color. We're going to do 8.5 by 11, 8.5 inches by 11 inches. It's called letter, and it's the most common form of paper and printer. So most printers you've ever used in your life use this letter format. So we know we can use it for our poster. I'm going to make sure and select this landscape orientation because I want my picture to look like a television screen, wide, and I don't want it to look straight up and down. So one of my seniors' favorite assignments is to do the teacher door posters that are on all the doors to the rooms. So we're going to do something similar to that today. Again, I don't care if you pick landscape or portrait, but go ahead and pick one of them, whatever way you want your orientation you want your poster to have, but just make sure 8.5 by 11, 300 pixels per inch resolution, CMYK color. Let's go ahead and hit create. Now, the secret to a great typography poster is cool fonts and a great quote. So I don't care what quote you use. In fact, I'd like your poster to be original to you. So pick some quote that means something to you. Just make sure it's not too long. Usually just a couple of lines. So I'm going to go ahead and create a quote called "Believe in your dreams." All right, but I'm only going to type out part of it because I want to use a different font for each line. And right now I've got impact selected. That's cool for right now. We'll change the fonts later. Let me show you a really quick and cool, powerful way to duplicate things here in Photoshop. We're going to go to our select tool, and I'm going to hit the Alt key and just drag this down, and then drag it down again. Notice it created copies for me over here. The Alt drag is useful not just for Photoshop, but Illustrator, After Effects, Premiere, and pretty much all the Adobe suite. So memorize the Alt drag, it's super cool. Alt drag, Alt drag, Alt drag. Okay, I'm going to undo all those. Now, I've got these 3 different layers. That's cool. I'm going to change them all. So this one, I'm going to double click and select and say in your. I'll click on, double click, and say dreams. Okay, so now I've got this cool quote. Obviously this is fairly boring, but we're going to make it more interesting with cool fonts. So let's take a little field trip to the web. Now I've got the URL to Adobe Fonts in Moodle, but there's a really cool shortcut. If you click right here in your character panel, you can go over here to More from Adobe Fonts. Hit this little button, and a browser will pop up. Unfortunately, it's Microsoft Edge, but we'll forgive Windows for doing that to us. Now, this is a playground of fun and cool fonts that you can add to Adobe. And some people are better at typography design than others. I will tell you that I'm not that great. I've had students that do an amazing job, but I try, and I've had to select fonts from my professional career as a designer. So, how do you pick good fonts? Well, for our typography poster, it's pretty important that they're readable. And how do you get readable fonts? Well, usually the simpler and the thicker, the more readable. However, we can change the size and scale of whatever fonts we choose. So I want you to go ahead and type some fonts in here. Do a search. Let's go Campaign. Campaign Slab, sure, why not? We'll go ahead and select that. And what you want to do is activate these fonts by hitting this button here. Of course, it's going to make me sign in. And now these fonts will be never save. All right, 4 fonts were activated. It popped up. Now when I go into Photoshop, I can use this slab. So Campaign Slab, I'm going to go over back to Photoshop, and I'm going to change this Believe right here from Impact to Campaign Slab. I'll go over here to my character panel. Campaign slab. Perfect. All right, cool. And then I've got some other favorite fonts I'm going to use for these next ones. So I'll go ahead and select my next one. Again, you're not using the same fonts as me. You're not even copying my quote. You're just kind of watching this to get an idea of how this is all done and how you can make a really cool typography poster. So for this, I'm going to select one called Gypsy because I like the typography fonts that look like handwritten text. I'll come over here to Impact and type in Gypsy. Right there, it's kind of a brush font. I'm going to have to change the size. It's a little bit hard to read, but of course I'm going to do that in the next step. Then I'll go over here to my dreams, select my dreams. I'm clicking on my dreams and I'm going to choose marker free. If I could type. There we go, mark freer. Just like that, cool. All right, so now I've got these cool fonts. I want to change the scale of them a little bit. So what I'm going to do is probably center everything. And there are tools to help center, but because it's so simple, I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. Again, my hotkey Control-T to change the scale. It's going to be super useful to me. What I want to do is have these be very large and easy to read. So I'll hit Enter there. I'll select this one, Control-T. What I'm just doing is kind of framing things. Now, framing is very important in design. There's a whole lot of theory behind what makes good framing. There's the rule of thirds, there's balance, all that good stuff you'll learn, but for right now, we're just kind of eyeballing it, and that just means we're doing the best we can with just moving things around for right now. We'll have plenty of time to complete that task. Now what I want to do is match this. I've got all caps in the dreams. Mark Freer is an all caps font. So what I'm going to do is capitalize my campaign here and put all these in caps. Like so. Of course it makes it big. There's some cool tools in typography that allow you to change tracking and whatnot over here. So if I double click on this, I can come over here to my tracking right here and I can drag and squeeze this down a little bit more to make it fit. Okay, now is this the coolest font in the world? Is this the coolest design? Probably not. It's just something I'm messing around with. I may have to change the scale of that a little bit to make it fit. I might not even stick with Campaign Slab. In fact, I might look and see what other campaign they've got. Maybe I go with regular. Maybe I don't go with campaign at all. What I want to do is create something called balance. So I'm going to even come over to Roboto. It's one I use quite a bit. Let's try Roboto Bold. I'm looking for a font that fits better into a smaller, more compact field without me having to change the tracking all the way down to where the letters are absolutely overlapping each other like this. Okay, so mess around with it. In fact, I could also make this mark freer here and try it. What I'm doing here is showing you the process that a designer goes through. They don't know in their heads exactly what they want to do. It's a creative visual medium, so you're changing things, seeing what it looks like, and if it looks good, then you keep it. So I'm going to try mark freer again, and let's see how that looks on Believe. Of course, I will change my tracking to be 0 again, like so. I change my scale up. I'd really like it to kind of match my bottom font there. Again, I don't know if this is going to look good. I'm just trying. Now, I hate this. I think it looks terrible. One of the things that's wrong is this I is not capitalized, no matter what I do in Mark Freer. And I just think that looks tacky and wacky. So I'm going to Control Z. Let's go back to Impact. And not Impact. Right over here. Let's change this back to Impact. And let's just stick with that and see what we can do. Okay, I do need to change the tracking and the scale a little bit to make it fit down, but I like the look of that a little bit better. Now, it was the one that I had defaulted to, which usually I don't stick with the default, but sometimes it ends up working out. So let's go ahead and keep it like that. You could spend forever picking the perfect combination of fonts and typography and balancing them. Try not to spend too much time, but definitely spend some time on Adobe Fonts, clicking around. Again, you go over to your fonts, come over here and explore Adobe Fonts. Find some cool stuff, find a cool quote. That's the first part of this assignment. So now you can pause and do all that. Okay, now we're back. The key to a great typography poster is a combination of things. We've already got our font and typography balanced fairly well. Pretty cool fonts in my opinion. And now we just need to give some visual interest to this. So we had some images we were working on and we can download some more. I encourage you to go onto some of the free either Pexels or Unsplash and find some cool images to work with. I'm going to bring in some images to bring attention to and to kind of frame this text. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up some files in Photoshop, but I can also place them by just dragging them from an Explorer. So I'm going to drag some images in here, like so. And I may want to change the scale and size of this, but I'll leave it there for now. And I'll leave it as a smart layer. I'm not going to rasterize it or anything. And then I've got some background images I want to play with. Remember this ocean that we had used? This ocean background that we fixed by using the content aware filter. I'm going to use this in the background too, I think. Maybe up to about there. Enter. And then I think that forest we spent so much time working on, I'm going to bring that in as well. I'll probably scale this up a bit. Like so. Okay, hit enter. Now I've got all that stuff on top. Of course I can move it down, so I'll shift select all these layers and move them down so we can still see our stuff. I'll bring the girl out front of all that. She's going to be in front. Now, I chose this girl looking because there's a psychological thing that goes into design. We're pretty simple creatures to understand in a lot of ways, and we can manipulate people's thoughts and emotions with design. So here I've got a saying, and then I've got a person looking towards that saying. Now that sounds really simple, but you'd be shocked how it helps our subconscious process the message. We kind of assimilate her thoughts and think, I'm her, I'm a person who believes and has dreams, I'm a human, and I'm pondering that. And so that subliminal message is sent simply by having someone look towards the message. Sounds crazy, but it totally works in design. Okay, so there's a lot we need to do here to make this actually look cool. I'd like this believe here to really capture our attention in a way that it's not right now. What we can do is actually make this believe look like the background. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. It's kind of cool. If we control select believe right here, we get a selection around it. Super cool. What we can do is use that selection to cut out a background. Let's go ahead and try that. Let's select our forest right here, and let's select the inverse. Here, I'm going to go ahead and just hide a bunch of stuff on the screen so that this kind of makes more sense. I'll hide the girl. So now we just have believe selected. Again, we control selected believe, and then I went down and selected the forest layer right here. What I'm going to do is select the inverse. So select inverse, and I'm going to go ahead and delete. I couldn't because it's a smart object. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to select this, duplicate it, hide it, and then I'm going to right click and rasterize layer. Now that was a lot. I'm practicing non-destructive editing where I copied this in case I wanted to use it later. But now I've got my forest selected. It's been rasterized. That just means I turn it into a pixel layer again. And now I've got believe selected on it. See, I can hide the believe layer and I still have everything else but believe selected. And if I hit delete, I'm left with this cool background. Kind of cool. I think it's cool. You guys might not like that, but I thought it was super cool. I'm going to walk through that process again. I'm going to go ahead and undo. What I did was I selected believe here. I'll unselect, Control D. And so I have this believe layer here. I control selected this icon. You can't do it over here. You got to do it right here. Control select, and it gives me a selection around it. Then I took and I rasterized the forest layer. You can tell it's rasterized because it doesn't have this little smart layer icon on it. And I do that by right clicking and rasterize layer. So then I select this. I can even hide the believe. It's just the selection I need. And then I want to select everything but the background. But we'll go ahead and select, inverse, delete. Cool. All right. So now I've got this typography, but now it's kind of a picture instead of just text. So Control D to reselect that, and we'll keep going. So now I've got believe, and then I've got in your dreams, and I'll have this cool background right here. I want to change this font color to white though. So I'll select these, double click on them, and we'll change this color to white. All right. You guys can feel free to mess with all the colors and everything on yours. Have fun with it. Again, color, white. Okay. Deselect that. Cool. So now I've got a cool background here. I could change this and mess with it, and we're going to do some of that in a bit. I just wanted to show you guys how you can make a selection and use fonts and a selection of a background to create kind of cool textures on your text. Cool stuff right there. Okay, now let's go over here to this forest and turn it back on in the background. And this girl. What I'd like to do is kind of a fun trick here where we kind of cut her out. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I've got this girl here. I'm going to go to Object Selection Mode. Remember that powerful feature, and click on her. It's smart enough to actually select her. Pretty cool, pretty powerful feature right there. Obviously, I'll have to cut these little finger areas out, but I've got her selected pretty decently here. Well, what I can do is select the inverse and delete it, so I'll go ahead and do that. Select inverse. I'll hit the delete key. It's not going to work though because the layer is not rasterized yet. So right click and rasterize layer, and now I can hit the delete key and we get her free of the background. Control D to deselect, and then I'll change to the magic wand tool to select these two areas. Although I need to take the tolerance way down, we'll go like 10%. Try that again. Select that, shift select that, delete. Okay, Control D to deselect. Now I've got her cut from the background very quickly and easily, and it's kind of cool, but we're going to make it way cooler, and we're going to mess with something called a transfer mode or a blending mode. Now these are really cool, powerful things. They came over from the film industry where they did a chemical process on film to cut out backgrounds and do cool things like that. And they baked all that kind of stuff into Photoshop and Illustrator, Premiere, After Effects, all those cool apps. And it's a blending mode. It's a way to blend this image with the one in the background. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's go ahead and hit this button where it says normal here. We can select this and we can change and get cool blending modes. Isn't that awesome? Some of you guys are gonna love this effect. I've never taught this to 9th graders before in my life, so this is all brand new to me now. That looks pretty cool right there, pin light. I'm not gonna lie, I like that. I think that's awesome. So I'm gonna keep that and try a couple different versions and just see what I like best. To me, this looks pretty cool here. I need to put believe back in there. Actually, I would need to get rid of the forest over here and add this. But anyway, I've got that cool thing. I'm practicing non-destructive editing, which means I'm gonna have different versions of this. So I'm gonna duplicate it and hide the one on the bottom. And hide the one on the top, select this one, and then try maybe a different mode and see what modes I like best. See what kind of looks the coolest. Let's go ahead and change this from pin light to kind of like hard light there as well, and linear light. So my favorite ones are probably hard light, linear light. Both of those look super cool. So I'll stick with hard light on this one. And then I'll look at the two and see which one I like better. So this one's softer and lets more light through. This one's a little bit more dark. I might like that one even better. Okay, so again, play with these blending modes. You can even use blending modes on your typography. So I could select this believe over here and change it to something else and get a cool effect. Okay, something to keep in mind when you're messing around. Just make sure it still maintains a level of readability. Okay, so that's cool. So what I want to do is bring the ocean right here. So I've got my font on the ocean. I want believe to actually be the forest, and then I want the forest to maintain itself over here, and then it ties the forest in her brain over to the believe. It's a psychological trick. It sounds like I'm just making it up, but I promise you this is all design theory. So let's keep going and I'll kind of show you what I mean. So to bring in the ocean, I'm gonna have to put it on top like that, but then I want to cut it out kind of. So I'm gonna move the ocean a little bit over to where I can blend it using her profile. And all I need to do is make selections to do that. So again, I could paint this out, but what I'm going to do is select the girl again, and I'm going to use my smart object selection tool right here and select her again. And then I'm going to go down to my ocean layer and cut that out. Again, I'm going to have to rasterize, so I'll right click right here and rasterize layer. Now I can hit delete and it will remove those portions of the ocean, leaving just her. So Control D to deselect. And now I've kind of got a cool blend going on there. And I kind of like it. We do have some area right here that doesn't look good, and so we could fix that. But let's not worry about that just yet. We've got an overall pretty cool image. Let's get rid of this believe right here. And now we've got our font, and the forest is tied together between the two. Now this is looking pretty cool. We could keep messing with it. We could add other things in here. We could duplicate this, change the blending mode. We could change the blending mode of like in your dreams. Fun stuff to try. I'd encourage you to mess around with it. See what kind of cool effects you can get going on when you change the colors and the blending modes of your fonts. Super cool stuff. Now you could spend a lot of time on this and get very artsy. I'm going to try a couple other things that may or may not work, and if they don't work, it's fine. I'm going to bring a pine tree in here and try to incorporate that into my typography. Again, this might not work, but I'm going to try. I just want to emphasize the tree aspect over here. One thing that's cool about your subconscious mind is it can put things together even when you obscure them. So you still probably read this as believe, even though I've got a pine tree coming through here. And I could actually delete this center selection here and just leave the pine tree. So I'm going to try it. Again, I'm trying things. I might not like it. You don't always know as a designer exactly which direction you want to go, and that's totally cool. Just keep playing around with it, because Photoshop is the ultimate playground. It's the sandbox, the digital sandbox, okay? So what I want to do is go down to this believe where we cut it out, and we need to actually type that in because it's getting very confusing. I've got the typography believe here, but we've got our cutout here. So I'm going to call this believe. That way it's easier to find in the layer stack. You want to keep this stuff organized. I may even delete this or move it down out of the way where it's not going to distract me. And we want to select this believe right here. And I want to go ahead and select just this middle part right here. Now I could just do that with the marquee select tool. Select that center, hit delete, and then I've just got my pine tree. Now this is a bit artsy. It's me just having a fun time as your instructor. You can mess with stuff all you want. It's pretty much unlimited creativity. Once you start learning about the basic tools of selection, deleting, layer stack, and blending modes, you add typography in there and cool fonts, you can make some pretty awesome stuff in Photoshop. And we'll just take you further and further. So you need to believe in your dreams. Okay, a couple more things I want to show you, and then we'll call this over, because this one's getting super long. What I want to do is I want to group everything together, non-destructively again. So I want to select everything I've got here, except for this background, which I can delete. I'll just go ahead and double click the background and delete it. We don't need it. I'll select everything I've got here, Control G. So I've got a group, I can call it poster. And then I want to duplicate it. I'll show you why in a second. So I'll duplicate it right there. I've got my old poster right there. Okay, I'll show you why we copied it in a second. First, I want to add kind of a light source coming from here. Now, you see the lady has light coming from this direction, so we don't have any light coming from over here. What I want to do is add an artificial light source to kind of tie the two together even better than the trees and the trees. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, to do that, we do need to copy everything, but I got to show you a couple little complexities that get in the way. What we want to do is flatten everything on top, and we're going to render a light flare over here, a lens flare. Okay. To do that, though, I'm going to have to take all of these layers that are still smart layers, and I'm going to have to right-click and rasterize them, like so. So this forest right here, and rasterize. That way they're all pixels, so I can render on top of them. Then I can select all of these all at once, right-click. Well, I need to go ahead and get rid of the ones in here that I'm not using, the ones that are not being shown right here. We'll go ahead and delete those layers. So then I'll select all these layers right here that are visible, right-click, and I want to flatten the image. Oh, I got to rasterize the type first. Let's go ahead and do that. Now I can right-click and merge layers. Okay, so now I've got non-destructive editing. I've still got everything I want down here. Nothing has disappeared. Please, if I've taught you anything about Photoshop, do not delete things. Don't just flatten them and save them. Always keep all of your work, because you may want to go back. And let me just talk about client work. I've worked with hundreds of clients over the years. And guess what? They make changes to stuff. So you always save stuff on a cloud somewhere. And you always save it non-destructively, so you can always go back, because lots of times you'll be working with a logo and the client wants to use old work, but you flattened it and you have to go rebuild all of it. And all they wanted to do was change their logo out real quick. Trust me, save everything, save it to the cloud, backed up, And always, always, always save all your work as a project with all the files and all the selections and everything hidden somewhere on it. You'll thank me one day, I promise you, you will. So now I've got this dream selected up here. Something cool I could do is I could actually change its mode and get some cool effects here. Like some really cool stuff. I mean, yeah, it doesn't do it for me, but it might your style or your client style. So it's something to mess with. You could change the mode here and it's kind of cool. Another thing you could do is you could blur this out. Let's go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we just blur this real quick and then we change the transfer mode on it or the blending mode. And you can get some cool effects that way. This is very like an old school 90s film look or whatever. Okay, stuff to have fun with and break your computer with. Cool? All right, I'm gonna Control Z that. I mean, I kind of like that. It's kind of cool. Maybe I'll save that. So I'll duplicate it again and hide it. Why? Because I thought it was kind of cool. But of course I want to undo the blur on it. So really I gotta go back a few steps. Undo the blur and we'll duplicate it and then we'll try blurring it. This one on the bottom here. So filter and we'll do that Gaussian blur again. Hide this. Change this to, what was it? I don't even remember. Some of these are pretty cool though. Right there, I think. Okay, so lighter color. All right, so again, I'm just playing around here and having fun. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing, but try messing around with it. All right, so I'm gonna hide that. What I wanted to do was actually render lens flare on here. So let's try that. I'll go ahead and go filter, render, and we'll go lens flare should appear there. Why doesn't it? So if I go over here to filter and render, I should be getting a lens flare and it's disappeared. And I just realized I'm in CMYK mode. It won't work. So I'm going to show you how it works though. So we're going to change the mode real quick just so I can show you. Okay, so I can go up to image, mode, and we'll go to RGB color. I'll just go ahead and I won't merge my layers. And I won't rasterize. It's okay. Normally you don't do crazy things like this, but I'm the Photoshop ninja, so here we go. Let's try that again. I've got this top layer selected, filter, render, lens flare. All that work for a lens flare, people. I'm gonna go ahead and move the flare over here to kind of highlight believe at the top of my tree. I'm gonna go to movie prime because I wanted to be a filmmaker at one point and movies are cool. Gonna crank that up a little bit like that. And hit OK. Boom, we've got lens flare, people. Now I may have added too much flare there. One thing that's cool though is because I didn't delete anything, I have it all here, I can take my layers right here, like I can take all this stuff right here, I can duplicate it, and I can move it up top, like so. Except for I probably wouldn't want the pine tree because that looks dumb. And then I would want, where is it? Believe here, duplicate it as well. So I duplicate that. Move it up top as well. And then I can use a blending mode on it. Of course, I might want to blur it, so filter. Let's go to blur, Gaussian blur, hit OK. And then I want to change the blending mode from normal to something else. I don't know. You know, have fun with it. That's the whole point of Photoshop. It's the whole point of this typography poster is you're doing something that's kind of cool and unique and fun. Again, this might not do it for you. I could spend a lot of time tweaking this. I may actually want to bring my pine tree back up and kind of emphasize this shot a little more, put it on top. But again, of course, I'm going to change the blending mode to something more like that, right? I'm not sure exactly, but I'd spent some time playing around with it till I got it just the way I wanted it. And if you're really struggling, you can also go over here to where I rendered that lens flare, and I could change the opacity down a little bit, like so. Okay, lots of fun things to try. There's no right or wrong answer to this assignment. Really, the things I'm looking for is that you tried at least 3 different fonts and typographies, that you came up with a cool saying, and you found a good way to frame it. Now, I could spend a lot more time on this. In fact, when I was originally concepting this in my head, it looked a bit different. And I do think that it would look better if you could read this even more. But also, you can pick up pretty quickly what it means in your subconscious, and that's all about getting the message across the best way you can. A couple things I'd try differently, I think, is I'd probably I wouldn't have this sharp cut right here between the two. I don't think that looks good, so I'd probably reframe her a little bit. Now, this could take a while, and I don't want to waste your time with it, but basically I'd want to scale her back up. And because I've already done all that work later on down here, it's not quite going to work. One thing I could do is crop it down though, but then I'd lose my 8.5 by 11, so I could crop it to there and it would look a lot better. But again, I'm not looking for perfection out of you guys. I'm really just looking for you guys to have a lot of fun and really think through the design process, learn about blending modes and play with them, learn about how to stack layers non-destructively and save them. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with on your typography poster. Don't forget, save it to the cloud, save it as a Photoshop file, share it with me. I'll see you in the next one.